Huh. Should probably read this. Oh, hey. Good to see you. Hope you had a great Mother's Day weekend. This is it, everybody. This is the week. We can do it. 5 days, 4 days, really, until the big exam on Friday the 15th. So today I wanted to do a couple things. Wanted to remind you a little bit of what's coming this week, and then I want to give a quick review of what I believe are the 4 big things to consider when looking at periods 6 and 7. So first off, today that's what we're going to do. Continue using your study calendar to get prepared for the test. Tomorrow on Tuesday, I'm going to be giving a DBQ in review, looking at all the things about the DBQ. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw the rubric up here on the screen, and we're going to go piece by piece through it and talk about it. A lot of you have emailed me questions over the last few days concerning the rubric and things you've heard and seen from other students and online and all that. And hopefully we'll clarify it. We're going to take it right from the horse's mouth, so to speak, in the College Board's rubric for your exams. So that's the first thing. The second thing, I want you to pay close attention today to the Supreme Court cases that are part of your study review. I think this could be really, really helpful. Obviously, forget about the ones that take place in periods 8 and 9. Don't need to worry about those, but focus in on the ones from periods 3 through 7. On Wednesday, we're going to have a Zoom meeting at 1 to answer any questions, because obviously Friday you're taking your test, so be ready for that. And then I think I'm going to change it up. I thought Thursday I was going to do a video, but instead I think I'll do another Zoom meeting where we can do questions and answers. So look for those as well. So let's move on. I'm going to look at my notes here, make sure I touch base with everything I want to discuss. So let's take a look at period 6 first. Period 6 is sort of the Reconstruction, the beginnings of progressivism kind of look at. This is, I would say, kind of the laissez-faire period, if you wanted to give it a name. And so I want to look at the four main themes. The first is Reconstruction, obviously. Reconstruction of the South after the Civil War. Period 5 ends right at the end of the Civil War, and period 6 begins with this new South. What does the South look like now under Reconstruction, and what does the political climate look like? This is the era of Jim Crow and the like. This is the era where we see the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. Free African Americans, give them citizenship, and give them the right to vote. So the Reconstruction issue is a big one. How are we going to put the country back together? And then how we're going to do it after the loss of our leader, Abraham Lincoln, who was assassinated. So we see here within Reconstruction the radical Republicans versus the more moderate Republicans. The radical Republicans really wanted to punish the South, really wanted to open rights to African Americans. The moderate ones were more concerned with bringing the South back in. We see things like Lincoln's 10% plan arguing against to Andrew Johnson's plan, and as well as the radical Republican plan. Who wins in this argument? Well, it's kind of a combination of all three, right? Reconstruction ends in the 1770s when basically Northerners realized that reconstructing the South costs a lot of money, and they don't want to do it, and so they just stop. They also feel that as more Southern states enter the Republic, they are having less success in passing Reconstruction legislation in Congress and the Senate. So they kind of give up, and Reconstruction ends, and largely they leave the South, and especially Southern blacks, completely abandoned by this. And this is where we see the birth of Jim Crow laws and the segregated South. It all comes from the end of Reconstruction. That being said, we also see sort of the civil rights movement of this period. We see, obviously, African-American rights. We see a great migration of African-Americans moving from the South to the North. But we also see rights of Native Americans, and specifically women, take large steps here in the reconstructed period 6. Women see that African Americans have the right to vote, that they have citizenship and the rest, and say, you know what, maybe we should too. And so we see the birth of women's movement, the Seneca Falls movement, and others in this period, where civil rights becomes something that's discussed as a political and social issue. And so that's really the second theme to think about when you're considering period 6. The other thing we need to think about in period 6 is this is the birth of the American melting pot. We like to think of America as this place where all these races and religions come together, all hunky-dory, and they create this new nation, this new culture. That's really not the case until we get to period 6. Period 6 sees that massive inrush of immigrants, mostly from Europe, but also from other places, and we see this melting pot. We also see, because of this, the birth of the city. The city just explodes during this time, during period 6, and will continue to grow into period 7. But period 6 really sees this influx of people and the sort of the urban movement in the United States. And a lot of that has to do with immigration. Now, with immigration comes industry, right? And we see industry really take root here, especially in the north and especially in these urban centers. Those two things have to come in conjunction with each other, right? We have to see the growth of industry coupled with the increase in immigrants, because immigrants provide that cheap labor to allow industry to grow. More people, more products, more buyers, more commerce, all of those things are connected. So remember to keep that in mind when you're thinking about period 6. The last one is the political alignment. As I said in the intro of this video, period 6 is kind of this laissez-faire period. We use this term, this French term, that refers to this like easy does it, who cares, let it be kind of mentality. And the politics of this era really take on that kind of idea. Many people were tired of the political infighting that led up to the sectional crisis of the Civil War, and they kind of just said, you know what? We're not really going to pay attention. And that's why period 6 sees some of the most ineffectual and not remembered presidents of all time, because they largely didn't do much. This is the birth of the political machines like Tammany Hall. This is the birth of party politics, where people were more loyal to their party than they were to the ideas and the ideals of the party. And quite frankly, Democrats and Republicans were kind of the same. We see the birth of the populist party here. It doesn't really get much strength. It never has really a presidential candidate, but it tries. We see folks like William Jennings Bryan become the most famous populist, who push for the silver movement and bimetallism. But there's a political realignment here in that Americans start to see and start to think that perhaps at the end of period 6, government can do more. They see a lot of industry and growth and this wealth just explode during this period, and they're taking advantage of regular people. And so things like the Meat Inspection Act and other movements, the labor movements, influence this period, so that when period 7 rolls around, we see dramatic change, where we see the realignment of politics, the populists kind of move into the progressivism, and we see the birth of government action in this case, and where people really want it to manage their lives and make them better. So those are the 4 major concepts that I think you should take a special look at in period 6. Period 7 is the period of wars, right? We see the Spanish-American War, we see World War I, and obviously World War II, which ends us out. So because of that, we need to take a moment to look at our first theme, and that is this movement of American politics and foreign policy specifically between isolationism and interventionalism / internationalism, back to isolationism, back to interventionalism. So it has this multiple change between these periods within period 7. We see Americans start to take notice of the world and want to play a role in it, expand manifest destiny, expand the empire, the birth of the American empire. And we see that in the Spanish-American War with the fight in Cuba, eventually taking colonies in the Philippines, Puerto Rico, and the like. That's where we move away from isolationism. Then in those early teens under Teddy Roosevelt and then Taft, we see, and then into Wilson, this birth of internationalism, where we're going to move into a period where America wants to be a player in the world stage. Teddy wins a Nobel Peace Prize. He sends out his Great White Fleet. Taft is a governor of the Philippines. And Wilson obviously gets us involved in World War I, making the world safe for democracy. But after World War I, America goes, enough, we're done. And they go back to isolationism, and we see isolationism in the 20s, which partially leads to our success in the 20s, the economic boom, and then the sudden decline and fall in the 1930s, where we move into the Great Depression. World War II begrudgingly moves America out of isolationism into internationalism, interventionalism, and then we haven't looked back since. So that back and forth is a real important key concept of period 7. Back to what we talked about in period 6, progressivism also takes root here, and that has largely to do with Teddy Roosevelt, but that has continued on through most presidents of the 20th century. And this progressivism, the basic idea is this, that the government can take action to help the lives of everyday people. So this is the cases where maybe government or maybe corporations should be regulated, should be moderated, should be looked at to the government so they don't take advantage of the people. The Food and Drug Act is a perfect example of this. Fair rail rates would be another. Safety conditions, minimum wage, living conditions. All these things are progressive movements where Americans are asking their government to take a hand and regulate business and regulate our lives so that it's safer for all of us. The other thing we have to really look at is this industrial transformation that happens really twice in period 7. The first is right after World War I, or during World War I, and then afterward, where we see another great migration of African Americans from the South into the North. And when they do so, they're finally getting industrial jobs, and the North becomes very industrialized at this point and commercial. This meaning we're not just making things to use up, we're making things that people want. We see the birth, because of this, of the consumerism culture, where people wanted to buy a lot of junk, a lot of stuff, a lot of gadgets and things. We see the birth of sort of the modern housewife in this era because of this consumerism, which comes from this industrial transformation that happens. And then it happens again in World War II with the arsenal of democracy, especially here in Detroit, where America not only becomes this producer for ourselves, we become a consumer culture, but we become a producer for the entire world, and trying to turn the world into a consumer culture as well. The last thing I want to talk about is the connection between, and the theme for period 7 is the connection between the economy and society. We see in no other period of time where the economy and society become so intertwined, so linked, that the economy moves society in directions and society moves the economy in directions. And here we can think of the birth, obviously, as I said, of consumerism, but we also see civil rights movements during this period are largely based on economic desires of African Americans and women who joined the workforce in huge numbers in World War I and World War II, and who really, really want to have both economic freedom and social and governmental political freedom as well. So those connections are really, really important in period 7. As you see time and time again through our struggles, those things join forces to make some dramatic change in the United States. So those are the 4 themes for each of those of our last 2 periods that we'll be studying. So take a look at those, think about those, and if you have questions, answer me. Tomorrow, check out the Flex Academy video. We are going to be talking about that rubric and going through it, giving you that last little crash course on what you should be doing, what you should be writing for your DBQ. That will be the video posted. Then Wednesday we'll open it up and have a Zoom meeting where you can ask any questions you want, and I will do my best to answer them. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy, stay smart, stay smiling, and I guess I will read this.